today, I want to talk about this definition: the feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity. The response of the heart, not the head, the heart, the knowledge of the mind, when the mind is rightly understanding God and the heart is rightly valuing God. I want to talk about this word based on this definition and just give a few verses, some encouragement. My word today is worship. And my title for this particular encouragement is 7 things you must spiritually worship through. Oftentimes, and I am certainly included in this, when you are going through specific things, this particular word does not necessarily kick in. I think worry kicks in versus worship. And so I wanted to encourage you to change your verbiage on a consistent basis to use this particular word, because it's going to help you through some things. And I want to use a couple of verses to introduce it. Then I want to talk about the 7 things real quick and let you go on about your day so that you can worship through this day. John 4:23, but the hour cometh and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. Psalms 29:2, give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. Because I know if you're anything like me, you're either going into something, you're in something, or you're coming out of it. And in all 3 of those situations, you need to do this word. You must worship through worst of times and worries. Worst of times and worries. And I'm going to use the actual word worship to share this information with you. Definition: something as being bad in the highest degree of possible. A state of anxiety and uncertainty over actual or potential problems. All of us have gone or are going through something that we are worried about. Where is the money coming from? What type is this relationship going to work? Am I going to be able to keep this job? Am I losing my house, or is my family acting right? We have some worst of times and worries, some losses, some things that have caught us off guard, and we are sometimes worrying about it because we may feel it's a worst of times. If you and I can take on the ability to worship through the worst of times and worries, we would be different individuals. We are natural, so in many cases, the things we deal with in the natural that we feel might be the worst of times and worries, our natural abilities kick in. And what do? We worry. We have anxiety. And those things might be overcome if we worship. So the first thing I want to say, if you're dealing with some worst of times, your back is against the wall, you don't know where the money's coming from, you don't know whether or not you're going to get through a particular thing in life, or you've had this amazing or great loss in your life, and you don't know how you're going to make it, worship. 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 Number 2, worship when you're overwhelmed and you got obstacles. Worship through being overwhelmed and obstacles. The definition or the meaning: to be completely submerged by your thoughts and emotions about all of life's current problems. This is what overwhelm means. To the point where you lack efficacy and feel frozen or paralyzed. A thing that blocks one's way or prevents or hinders or progress. Imagine being overwhelmed and having obstacles on a day-to-day basis, and you are trying to handle it yourself. Lean on your own understanding. Instead of worshiping through it, giving God glory that you can talk to him about being overwhelmed and the obstacles that you are dealing with. There was a gentleman who had they had an obstacle that could have overwhelmed them in a way that probably may have taken their life, but they had a tool that they used that changed everything, including the atmosphere and the thoughts of others. They had worship. And sometimes when we're overwhelmed and we have obstacles, when we worship, it will blow the enemy's mind that this is not troubling you. And no matter what situation you're thrown in, whether it's in the fire or in the flame, in the heat of the problem or that you're overwhelmed with, and the obstacle you're overwhelmed with, doesn't matter how hot it gets when you worship. Matter of fact, it can get as hot as it wants, but when you're worshiping, the Lord and the Holy Spirit will cool it down and get you through it, even when we don't think we will. And I'm sure that they didn't think that they were going to get through probably the fire, especially when they actually turned the fire up hotter than it's ever been to prove a point. And the angel turned up the coolness enough to prove a point. When you're worshiping, there's anything that can stand against it, including the heat of the situation. So when you're overwhelmed and you got obstacles, worship. Number 3, worship through rebuilding and resistance. To build something again that has been damaged or destroyed. And if anybody is listening to my voice, I know we have gone through some things that have caused some great damage and has been destroyed. We've been fractured in ways in life, disappointed in some things, and we're rebuilding our foundation and our life. And sometimes even when we're rebuilding, we come up against resistance. We come up against people who don't want to see us get through it, or consistently throwing things on us. And yet, the refusal to accept or comply with something, the attempt to prevent something by action or argument. When you're rebuilding and there's resistance involved, or just the mere fact of starting over, worship. Be thankful you can rebuild, and be thankful you can get through resistance because you're worshiping. And yet, I know for a fact it ain't always easy to do it, because that's not the first thing we think of. When we rebuilding, we're probably getting over trying not to hate somebody or hate the situation or be challenged with the mere fact that we don't want to think about what's going on and who caused it, even when we're trying to get through it. And yet our struggle is in rebuilding is because we're not worshiping. We don't often think that the Lord can bring us through a rebuilding process. And matter of fact, he's the greatest God of starting over, because there's a lot of individuals who had to start or got a second chance or third or fourth or fifth chance to rebuild and get through resistance in their life to make it happen. Because there's plenty of them out there who can say that they are a testimony that they were able to rebuild their life regardless of resistance and all the other things that they have gone through. So when you are rebuilding and you got resistance in your life, even if you're not rebuilding and you have resistance in your life, worship. Number 4, worship through stress and struggles, a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances. The strive to achieve or attain something in the face of difficulty or resistance. If you've lived on earth long enough, there's been some stress and some struggles in your life that you have tried to handle. And not often do we always, it doesn't always work out right. Because sometimes, or in most cases, there's something we leave out. And in that case that of leaving out, we leave out worship, because we don't think it goes together in most cases. When we're stressing and we got struggles, we don't think it's good to be thankful that we're struggling. Just the mere fact that you're alive to struggle, Not that the Lord wants you to struggle, because he wants to be included in your life so you don't struggle. But even so, thank the Lord for the struggles, because there's some people that don't even have the opportunity to do it. Worship in the midst of your stress and struggles, because stress is truly one of them that many of us and all of us deal with in some area of our life. As long as we walk this earth, there's going to be that moment that something happens and we begin to do one of these two things, or one of these two things are happening. And yet, Psalms 18:6 says, in my distress, I called upon the Lord and cried unto my God. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came before him, even into his ears. My worship will be heard when I give it to the Lord. Worship through stress and struggles. And believe me, when you begin to get into your closet or your quiet space and talk about this particular area that you're dealing with that's causing stress and struggles, and you start to lift it up to the Lord, or give it up, or cast your care on him, your stress and struggles on him, somehow or another, there's a spirit that comes over and begins to help you relax and not worry. It makes your mind at ease so that you believe and have faith that you'll get through it. So when you got stress and struggles, worship. In your way, give God glory, do his name, and thank him. Be grateful for the things that you're dealing with or that you're going to get through. Stress and struggles. Number 5, you gotta worship through hurts and haters. Everybody ain't for you. Even the Lord knew that. To feel or suffer bodily or mental pain or distress. A person who greatly dislikes a specified person or thing, that's a hater. I know for a fact there are a lot of us, if not all of us, we're going through some type of hurt. And there's so many different levels, and there's so many things that you can be hurt in. And yet you need to worship. Some of us truly understand what it means to deal with haters. Whether it's behind our back, whether it's in our face, whether it's at a distance or close up. It's going to mess them up while you're worshiping, because see, they ain't going to see you worship in your little closet or your private space. You're worshiping through the difficulties that you're going through. And then on the other side, when you come out, you are shining like a bright light. And they're going to be wondering how in heaven's name you got through what you are dealing with, because you worship. No matter what area you were hurting in or what situation you were hurting in. And the haters have no idea that you have that built into your toolbox or your tool set that you can pull out on a consistent basis when hurt and haters come into your life. Psalm 71:24. For they are brought unto shame that seek my hurt. There will be people in your life, and sometimes they're the closest ones, that causes hurt and pain to you, and you got to worship through it. That was number 5. Number 6, you got to worship when you think you have impossibilities. Worship through impossibilities, the condition of being unable to happen or to be achieved, something that you yourself believe is not going to happen, an impossibility. And if you've been seeking, or you got this amazing dream or vision and you think it's taking too long, or it's impossible, or you're dealing with a situation that just doesn't seem like it's going to happen, or maybe you have embarked on a particular thing for your life and it just keeps running up against the wall. As they say, you have more bills than money, and find out That how is this going to happen, Lord? How am I possibly going to get through this? Because it looks like it's impossible. It's the impossibilities in your life that happen. Maybe your health, you just can't get through this particular, this little piece keeps running up. You're running up against, and or you have something specific that you just can't get over. The impossibilities in life, you gotta worship through. The condition of being unable to happen or to be achieved, it looks like it's impossible. I want to share Matthew 19:26. But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. When you worship and the Lord is your focus, he will make the impossibilities possible. And sometimes we in our own life may not believe that, because we're right in the mix of this particular challenge that we're dealing with, or issue, whatever it might be. And it looks like it is impossible. And it really might be, because you and I have left out worship. Because we're trying to do it with our own strength, and we have not worshiped and brought the strength of the Lord into our situation. What would happen if we consistently brought him into the situation to let him handle it by worshiping, and watch the change in that situation? And even when that change happens, you got to worship. You got to give the Lord praise, glory, and honor. Don't take the credit, because it's extremely important to give him credit where credit is due, by changing the impossibilities to the possible. So when we have a situation where it looks impossible, you got to worship, because with God, all things are possible. Lastly, one of the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, we got to worship through problems and pains. A matter or situation regarded as unwelcome or harmful, and needing to be dealt with and overcome. A distressing feeling often caused by intense or damaging stimuli. When you got problems and pains, one of the things that can help you get through this matter or situation that is unwelcome or harmful is worship. Revelations 21:4. This is for those of us in our Christian walk who truly understand where we are going, what God can do for us. It says, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. This is a heavenly statement. And yet, even in this heavenly statement, when you worship, that is the same exact thing the Lord can do. He can wipe away your tears. He can take away the death and sorrow of what you're dealing with. He will keep and help you from crying, unless you're crying unto him about that situation. He can help you get through it. And he can remove the pain that you are going through, and it will be passed away. Now, that's my verbiage on that verse, but it has a different meaning. But I believe for a fact, and have faith and belief, that the Lord in our day-to-day life can do those things and will do those things when we worship, especially when we're dealing with problems and pains. And that can come in a variety of ways. And in those variety of ways, there's a variety of ways to approach the Lord with our difficulty. And that variety is being straightforward about what we're dealing with, honest, authentic, and transparent, because he knows, but he wants to hear it. He wants you to cry out. He wants you to talk to him about what you're dealing with and worship through it. So today I want to encourage you as you go through the rest of this day, the rest of this week, this month, this year, especially if this is part of your Christian walk, worshiping should definitely be up there on the list at the top, if not the top. Because there are many things day to day that we deal with that are in our life, in our heart, mind, body, soul, and spirit, in our emotional, our physical, our spiritual, our mental, and our psychological areas of life that we need to worship in and worship through. When you're under attack in an area of life that you just feel or seem like you can't get through, or you don't know how to deal with it, get that feeling or expressions of reverence and adoration for a deity that actually provides a response from the heart and the knowledge of the mind, because you can respond with your heart by worshiping and know in the mind that God will do what he says he will do, especially if you know him. When the mind is rightly understanding God and all that he can do, we will value each one of these things that we can worship through. The worst of times and worries, being overwhelmed and obstacles, rebuilding our life and going up against resistance, stress and struggles, hurts and haters, impossibilities we believe in life, and problems and pains. And if you are dealing with any of these, which I know there are many more that you can possibly deal with, but I believe, based on the word worship that I used, that these are probably in some of us, if not all of us, the tops of our list of things that we deal with on a day-to-day, life-to-life basis. So I want to encourage you to worship. Find a way, read your scriptures, pray, thank the Lord, be grateful on a consistent basis. It says continually do it. It should be continually coming out of our mouth. And it says, but the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him.